Karl Hermann Frank was born in 1998 in Carlsbad, a city then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The empire itself was a tapestry of ethnicities, nationalistic tensions, and political unrest, a world that would later breed the ideologies that gripped Europe in the first half of the 20th century. Frank's early years were steeped in the currents of German nationalism, particularly in the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia where ethnic Germans formed a significant population. Politics became Frank's chosen arena early on. He gravitated toward nationalist movements, drawn by rhetoric promising unity, strength, and dominance for his people. These affiliations were the first steps on a path that would eventually intertwine him with the most infamous political regime in history, the Nazi Party. By the late 1930s, Frank had risen through the ranks of the Sudeten German movement, gaining recognition for his organizational skills, loyalty, and ruthless ambition. When Germany occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, Frank's ascent reached its zenith. He was appointed Secretary of State and Higher SS and police leader for the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, a position granting him unprecedented authority over the Gestapo, the SD, and local police forces. In effect, he became the ultimate enforcer of Nazi rule in the region, a man whose orders could dictate life or death with bureaucratic efficiency. Frank's governance was marked by unrelenting brutality. Resistance movements, which had begun as small, scattered acts of defiance, were met with overwhelming violence. Following the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich in 1942, a pivotal figure in Nazi Germany and one of the architects of the final solution, Frank orchestrated reprisals that were swift, merciless, and calculated to terrorize the population into submission. The villages of Lidice and Ležáky became symbols of this calculated cruelty. In Lidice, men were executed, women deported, and children were either murdered or forcibly Germanized. Days later, Ležáky suffered the same fate. These acts were not anomalies. They were deliberate strategies to crush rebellion and instill pervasive fear. Through public executions, mass arrests, and a climate of unrelenting terror, Frank cultivated an image of omnipotence. His voice, broadcast over the radio, warned the Czech people that resistance would only bring more bloodshed. Even as the war turned against Germany, Frank's cruelty showed no signs of moderation. In 1945, during the Prague uprising, he ordered his forces to fire upon civilians and insurgents alike, demonstrating a commitment to terror that was absolute, even in the face of inevitable defeat. Frank's attempts to negotiate as Allied forces approached, first with the Soviets and then with the Americans, were ultimately futile. Captured by U.S. forces, he likely believed that American custody might shield him from Czech justice. But the Americans, acknowledging the gravity of his crimes and the demand for accountability, handed him over. His fate, once again, was inseparable from the actions he had taken, the lives he had destroyed, and the terror he had sown. The trial of Karl Hermann Frank began in early 1946. He faced charges that encompassed war crimes and crimes against humanity, including direct responsibility for the massacres of Lidice and Ležáky, as well as years of orchestrated terror under Nazi occupation. The trial itself was meticulous, a legal reckoning designed to untangle the complex web of orders, complicity, and individual responsibility. Witnesses testified to atrocities that were almost unimaginable in scope and horror. Families annihilated, villages erased, communities traumatized. The proceedings underscored the stark reality that history often exacts its justice in the courtroom, long after the violence has ended. Sentenced to death, Frank's punishment was swift. The Czech people, still grieving and seething with outrage, clamored for closure. There would be no delay, no reprieve. The execution was scheduled, a somber culmination of years of oppression and cruelty. On May 22, the prison courtyard became a stage for both justice and collective memory. Thousands of spectators, many of whom had survived the occupation or lost loved ones, watched silently. The air was charged with the weight of history, a collective desire to see a symbol of tyranny held accountable. Frank faced a wooden pole, the instrument of his execution, rather than a traditional gallows. This method, known as pole hanging, was designed to suffocate rather than snap the neck, creating a slow, agonizing death. The intent was clear. Those who had perpetrated the worst atrocities would not die swiftly. Instead, they would confront the grim, drawn-out consequences of their actions. Guards tied Frank to the pole, passed a rope over a beam, and fastened it around his neck. He was hoisted slowly, his feet dangling above the ground, suspended in the chilling silence. The minutes stretched interminably, a silent testament to the gravity of his crimes, until at last, his body hung limp, a stark, final punctuation to a life defined by fear, violence, and absolute power. The courtyard in Prague was thick with anticipation and the weight of vengeance. May 22, 1946, was no ordinary day. It was the culmination of years of terror, suffering, and unrelenting brutality. Karl Hermann Frank, once the absolute ruler of Bohemia and Moravia under the Nazi regime, faced the final, inescapable reckoning for his actions.